This will be my spoiler-free review of the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. If, however, you want spoilers, I do have a reading vlog for each of these 3 books and individual reviews for each one. This review will be for the series as a whole, but I'm going to put them down because they're a little heavy. So the main thing that I want to try to avoid for this review is comparing it to The Faithful and the Fallen, also by John Gwynne, but I'm going to really try to just review it as its own thing. It helps that I read The Faithful and the Fallen like 4 years ago, so that one is not fresh in my mind. This series is Nordic-inspired Viking fantasy. And the wonderful thing about that is that the author, John Gwynne, is a Viking reenactor. So he knows all the things. He knows all the terminology. He's familiar with the clothes, the armor, the food, the general lifestyle. It's like he knows what it's like to live that life and made a story about it. And it really feels like his knowledge of that subject matter really shines through and feels like it elevates the story. And that right there is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, draw to this series. This is not a hugely plot-driven trilogy. It is really about that Nordic atmosphere. It's very like Viking slice of life, but with magic. And it's about following the characters in this world through their lives. It takes place in Vigrid, a land that had been ruled by the gods. Dread Snaka, the snake god, was the creator and the father of the other gods, all that had an animal aspect, but they could all also take human form, which is important to the story because they took human form often enough to populate Vigrid with humans with the blood of gods in their veins. That phrase comes up a lot. You will read the word veins more than you wanted to. And then all those gods got mad at each other, fought the Gudfalla, or the God War, killing each other off. Now Vigrid is ruled by the humans. The tainted, the humans with the blood of God in their veins, are now thralled. They are made slaves, or they are killed. So those who are tainted have to keep it secret if they can, trying not to get found out in this new world they live in. And that can be hard sometimes. So the tainted each have the blood of one of those animal aspect gods. So like Snaka the snake, they have some snake blood, or like Bursar the bear, they have some bear blood, bear god blood. So they can do this like partial werewolfy morph thing where they take on some types of aspects of the animal god that they are descended from. So like bigger muscles, sharper teeth, better senses of smell, vision, hearing, eyes change color a little bit, and those things come out in moments of stress or anger or fear. So they have to work really hard on self-control or get caught. So, to the story, the plot and the characters. Maybe I should have started there, but I felt like the setup was a little bit necessary. So it starts actually pretty quietly with a small family. Thorkel, big strong man. Orca, his wife, one of the main characters and the name of the point of view chapter, and their son, Brekka. The 3 are on a family hunt, and it's like just getting a little glimpse into their life. How they treat each other, their personal values, how the parents are wanting to raise their son in this harsh world that they live in. And it's obvious pretty early on that the parents have some kind of mystery in their past that's not revealed yet. While they're out hunting, they discover a neighboring homestead that has been brutally attacked, and the child that lived there is missing. And that is like the inciting incident to the actual inciting incident. It's what gets this family to go get involved in things, and then there's a different inciting incident to that family that gets them to then go farther and get involved with the main, like, larger plot of the story. In true John Gwynne fashion, each chapter is named for one of the point of view characters. First one being Orca. One of the other main point of view characters is Varg. He is a runaway slave. He was a thrall. His sister has been taken and he has run away just to get away, but also he's looking for a magic user, either a Seether witch, hopefully saying that right, which would be someone descended from the god Snaka, or a Galderman, someone who does not have god blood in their veins. See, we're using the word veins a lot, but use rune magic. So he's just looking for whoever he can find to perform this magical ceremony for him, and this is how he encounters the Bloodsworn. Yes, the group of people that the series is named after. The Bloodsworn have fame in the land of Vigrid. They are well known. They're basically a mercenary group. They get hired to go do jobs and stuff, and Varg tries to join them. And while he is trying to join them, they get hired to do a job, and they go out, and we get to follow the Bloodsworn as they go do their Bloodsworny things. We get to see the nautical part of Viking life a little bit. And then the other main character we start with is Elvar. Young girl, woman. She is part of the Battlegrim, another group like the Bloodsworn, mercenary Viking style group, and she is just trying to earn gold and fame. She is there for the adventure. When the story starts, they are chasing a berserker, someone of Berser the bear's blood, so they can go sell him to a thrall owner and get some gold. Of those three main characters, I was the most emotionally connected to Orca, the mom. No surprise, since I am also a mom. And of those three, I felt the most like Elvar's point of view was the least important, although my feelings on that changed over the course of the series. The series is very character focused. The plot happens, but that's not really what it's about. It's about each of the characters' journeys. And it does not start on an epic scale. It starts very small, just following them in their day-to-day stuff. You are set in the world, watching how these three characters live. And then over the 3 books, that scale, like how large of a scale the story takes place in, slowly grows and crescendos through the 3. And each of the 3 books does not feel like its own story. Sometimes you get a trilogy and each one is like a full book by itself. This one is like one long book with a couple of pausing points if you want to pause, or you can just read straight through. So some things about the story. John Gwynne has added some flavor words, and I don't know if these are Nordic inspired terminology or just things he wanted to add to make it feel like it doesn't take place in the normal world. Things like, instead of saying someone is smart or wise, they are deep cunning. And instead of saying mind or brain, it is thought cage. I've seen a lot of people online complain about the term thought cage being overused. Didn't bother me once I got used to it, just felt like part of the world. This book has very little, almost no romance. There's a little bit of adult content. There are characters who get together. It's not closely described like in Romantasy or other books that like that's part of the point of reading it. A couple will get together, it's usually short, and then it moves on to the next thing. There is quite a lot of fighting and blood violence. This was not written for a younger audience. And if I were to talk about best parts versus worst parts, I think one of the best parts was just the overall vibe of the book. If you like Viking fantasy, this is it. The magic is pretty light. Like the fact that characters have the blood of gods in their veins is a thing. And then during some of the fighting scenes, the characters who can use magic, the Seether witches and the Galdermen, they kind of fling spells back and forth. It's rune-based magic, so they're like forming runes in the air and then flinging magic. But it's not a huge part, and there is no this character is learning to use their magic kind of thing. Like those training sequences, no. There's a few with fighting though. There's a few places where some of the more experienced Bloodsworn are teaching a couple of other characters how to fight, but it's not very in-depth. It's like, hit them, don't let them hit you. I love the camaraderie in the book, especially among the Bloodsworn. There's this really deep sense of brotherhood, sisterhood, that close bond of we are in the shield wall together, we fight together, live together, eat together, sleep together in more ways than one, risk our lives to rescue each other when needed. I forgot to mention this in my vlog. There was a ceremony that happened that I loved. I tend to like ceremonies in fantasy books, and this one involving the Bloodsworn. I really liked it. You're not going to get to it right away if you read it, but I thought it was really cool. Now for the fun part, my criticisms. For one, there were too many characters. Those first 3 characters that you get at the beginning expand in the next book into a couple of more character point of views. I thought having both the Bloodsworn and the Battlegrim was a little confusing. Sometimes it was hard to remember which group I was following and what they were doing. And I think a series that just has too many characters to follow, each of those characters suffers a little bit by not being able to go into as much depth. And then there's too many character threads to bring together and wrap up at the end. So, too many characters. Also, the battle scenes. I put this one under my criticisms. Someone else might put it under like the things they liked about it. I think part of the draw of this book for some people for a slightly darker style fantasy will be those fight scenes and just how raw and brutal they are. I felt like there was too much blow by blow description in the fight scenes. Describing too much in a fight scene slows it down a little too much. I don't need to know every single scratch, punch, swipe, kick, every tooth that flies out of someone's head. Oh, I forgot to put it in my notes. There's also Vaesen, the magical creatures. Snaka, the snake god, made his own, and then Likrifa, the dragon god, had made some of her own. They're like basically the fairies, but Nordic inspired. And so there's these cute little creatures, creepy creatures, the trolls, the Faunir. What made me think of that was the teeth flying out, because there's one of them, one of the types of creatures that can fly, love to eat fresh teeth. And so if you are injured, they might steal your teeth, but also you can bribe them to help you by providing them with fresh teeth. Kind of weird, kind of gross. In some spots, kind of cute. Another thing that I would like to criticize is the gods themselves. I don't know how much I can get into it and keep it spoiler free, but I feel like there was this really high expectation for the gods to be so cool, in part because of the art by Marcus Whinny, which I will link his art page in the description. He did a fantastic job making the dragon and the wolf and the snake just look so ready to tear the earth apart. I had very high expectations for what that would look like in the story, and I felt like it didn't quite get there. And I'm not sure if that's the author's fault. I don't know how much he had built it up in my mind from reading the story versus my own expectations from the amazing cover art. So anyway, I felt a little let down, especially since like the whole premise is the shadow of the gods. The hunger of the gods, the fury of the gods, making it sound like it's all about the gods and what's going to happen at the end. But I'm not to the end yet. My last criticism is that once you get towards the end, the big confrontation between a couple of different groups, I felt like the reason for that confrontation, the whole setup for it, was a little weak. I don't feel like it was a strong enough thing to cause to happen what happened at the end between large groups and gods and things, and it could have been easily avoided, or they could have taken a different route, or I don't know. I felt like there were a lot of loopholes, a lot of other ways it could have been handled. So as long as you don't think too hard about why certain groups are against each other, because eventually once it's leading up to the final confrontation, there are other reasons for it by then. Each side has their own thing that they believe in, that they're fighting for. For some of them, it's gold. They are mercenaries after all. Some of them have really strong passions for what they're fighting for, and some of them are just, I don't know, there because they thought they had no choice. All right, and then the ending. It felt chaotic. It felt messy. It felt unplanned. Like there were all these things from these characters and from all the stuff that was supposed to happen and come together, and things just kind of started to fall apart and unravel, and I felt like the ending was not very well done, which is more disappointing when it's a really long series. Each book is like 500 or 600 pages. I felt like not everything got resolved. There were things left hanging. The final confrontation itself didn't go as I had planned, which I don't feel like I can totally criticize something for not going as I planned, because what do I know? It doesn't really matter what I think. But I felt like it was building up and leading up to something that was just kind of disappointing at the end. There were a lot of personal vendettas woven into the big main confrontation, and then the very, very end, super emotional. By this time, you've gone on this whole journey with these characters, and the characters at the end just had me bawling. That's a selling point. If you thought that was not a selling point, that is a selling point. But the ending, like the last third quarter that I thought was a little messy and chaotic, not bad enough to ruin the journey. Not bad enough that I would say maybe you shouldn't read this. It just felt like at the end, John Gwynne was probably emotionally fatigued and done, and he could have spent more time on it and chose not to. Which, if you're watching this and you're not aware, between finishing the second book and writing the third book, he had a huge personal tragedy in his life. He did not have to write that third book, at least not as soon as he did, and he still chose to. So as a reader, I find myself just being thankful that we still got a story because he did not have to. And if at the end things just weren't perfect, I think that's okay. I'm not going to be mad at someone who has suffered through a horrible time in their life and still created art. That's kind of what we're supposed to do. It's part of the point of creating art. So I thought this series was a good, solid story with a good enough ending. And if you are already a John Gwynne fan, add it to your library. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys a lot. I will link my Patreon and my Instagram in the description. I hope whatever you're reading right now is amazing, and if it's not, that you have the courage to DNF and then maybe give the Bloodsworn Saga a try. Happy reading. Bye.